Hi, and welcome back. Summer is just chugging right along. Before we know it, we'll be back in school. University move-in time coming again soon. Affordable housing, that's an ongoing issue, and it's certainly something that I wanted to talk a little bit about here. By the way, my name is Sheldon McLeod, and as mentioned, this is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you here exclusively on the Saltwire Network. Affordable Housing Commission Final Progress Report. This was a news release from Municipal Affairs and Housing Department. And there's a quote, as we conclude our mandate, we're encouraged that government is continuing to take meaningful action to make housing more affordable and to increase the supply of affordable housing across the province. That's a quote from Ren Thomas, Associate Professor at Dalhousie University School of Planning and the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Commission co-chair. And I was very lucky to meet Ren Thomas through that work, and we've joined her now, or she's joined us, in Sweden. I don't know what the proper term for saying hello and welcome in Swedish is, but nice to see you, Doctor.
Hey, god morgon. Yes, thanks for having me.
So this commission, let's go back a little bit in time. You were appointed co-chair. The mandate was what? It's about affordable housing. What was the goal? What is
Our goal was to increase access to affordable housing for people in Nova Scotia, and it's a lot for a small province like ours, where we of course are limited in resources compared to the larger provinces.
Mm-hmm. 17 members of the commission, various sectors, regions, backgrounds. What do you feel was the biggest accomplishment that the team was able to realize through the last year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, I think that it was a really good group of people to come up with some really constructive solutions. And it was, I found what was surprising was we had these 4 working groups with members of, all the different sectors, and they were supported really well by the staff as well at the ministry or at the department. And it was just really interesting to see like how they collaborated together to come up with these solutions that are really, I think, quite workable, and to come up with a realistic set of recommendations. So these are, and you can tell by the actions already that government has actually committed to taking action. And we have to remember too, this is not the government who struck the mandate or who struck the commission, actually. So we had 3 governments in the span of a year and a half here. Right. So it's actually kind of impressive that the current government has agreed to and has followed through with all these recommendations, considering it wasn't even in their original mandate.
Right. And the new news release says of the 17 recommendations and 60 meaningful actions in the report from 2021, charting a new course for affordable housing in Nova Scotia, close to 50 are complete or substantially complete, and most of the remaining are in progress. So what for folks who might be struggling to find a place that's affordable, where's the bright light? Where's the inspiration? Where is this going to?
Yes, of course. For people who are currently in the situation where they are really struggling, it's tough. I mean, hopefully some of that, especially with the community housing, will start to happen really quickly. The other thing that was announced really quickly were the additional rent supplements. That has already been, people have already been benefiting from those, and those will continue to be funded. There's also rental rehabilitation fund that has been increased. That was a fund we already had in the province, but the amount has been increased. So people who already have affordable units and they want to do renovations and keep those units affordable, they can access that funding to do so. So that's having an expansion to that fund, I think, will really help people in the short term as well.
We heard, I think all of us have learned what the term renoviction means over the last couple of years. It's still happening in some circumstances for folks. What was the report's conclusion there? Was there a recommendation on that?
Yeah, there has been some changes to the Residential Tenancies Act. So another thing to keep in mind too is our recommendations are so broad. I mean, they include changes to the Municipal Governance Act to allow different type of municipalities to have different powers, different tools to use to build more affordable housing or to have more affordable housing built. But they also include changes to the Residential Tenancies Act. And so one change that was announced just this year in March is that a landlord can't terminate a lease for the purpose of demolition or renovations, except by mutual agreement between the landlord or tenant, or order of the director of residential tenancies. And if a lease is terminated for renovation, landlords have to compensate the tenants. So that is a change that was just put in place. And so, and that there similar change was put in place in Vancouver under Mayor Kennedy Stewart, and it has had the effect of reducing what we call renovictions, because landlords had to sort of think twice about having to pay that compensation.
Right. I think there was some real strength in the argument that, people need to have some control or power. But the other side of it is this is all happening. This commission or this report was commissioned at a time when it wasn't quite as tight as the market has gotten. And the fact that we've seen some might say had been a correction and an overcorrection with the housing market. How did you take that into account, knowing that, things were happening around you as you were going through the process, right?
It seems to be always the case that things are happening so quickly that, it's really hard to keep track. But I mean, we know that even if things did like magically get better, I don't know, in the next 6 months, there's still going to be people who are who are low income, who are potentially, at risk of displacement. And we know there's the homeless count this year showed that there has been an increase. And most people, when they were asked, why are you experiencing this phenomenon right now, it was affordability. They couldn't afford. They had been going along for so long and just all of a sudden couldn't afford because the landlords did raise the rent by a ridiculous sum. So, I mean, we're really hoping that obviously in the shorter term, we've gotten a very positive response from the federal government. Like we've had these rapid housing initiatives that have started. There's been some communities that have been doing great work on founding community land trusts, which has been supported through both the federal and the provincial government. So we have two new ones in the province that were just announced in March, and they're both African Nova Scotian communities. So working really hard as well with groups like Tawak Housing to increase options for people in Indigenous communities as well.
This affordability crisis isn't just here in Nova Scotia. In fact, there are cities right across North America who are dealing with encampments, people who have a literally just a tent and a small parcel of land to find a place to live. And were there examples? Are there lessons to be learned? Why, across the country, were you able to uncover any universal truths in what your team was working on?
Yeah, and I think that now, one of the things we talked about, it's weird, it seems maybe strange to talk about the labor market or housing construction, but that is actually a huge factor of why housing has gotten so expensive in Nova Scotia to build, is that we have a shortage in the labor market, but also that building materials are quite expensive. So places like Vancouver, where VAHA, the Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency, is actually building container housing, for example, it's like, what can we learn from that? And they're actually being built in a lot of smaller communities as well, like in Ontario, Quebec. So can we learn from that? Can we? There is a recommendation in here to kind of increase our enrollment in those trades, and to actually give people incentives to join the trades, because we just have such a shortage of skilled trades here. So that's definitely been one thing that I think our province has learned, and that we put right into the recommendations, is that we need to build housing. We also need to build housing quicker and with a kind of more of a workforce than we have now.
As mentioned, there were a team of folks involved in putting this report together, and some would look at government action or inaction on previous reports. You're confident that this is going to make a difference, that people will see some outcome that is part of the goal to help make housing more affordable?
Well, what I've said from the beginning is the power of issuing these progress reports is it's now the public, including advocacy groups or whoever, homeless organizations, who are helping people, actually now have the power to hold a government accountable if they do not take action, because they now have a report, or a series of reports actually, that shows that the government has committed to these things. So they can follow up and say, like, well, all right, where are these units that you promised? Where are those demonstration projects that should be built by now? Where are the partnerships with Indigenous communities to build this supportive housing, for example? So, I mean, that is the power that is now within the hands of Nova Scotians to demand that, to follow up on these recommendations and the actions that are being taken.
Well, once you file your report with its recommendations, the work, your job is done, and I'm hoping that there's no one feeling frustrated that somehow this was not just a political exercise.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too. And I know that there is some really good work being done, like in the different sectors. For example, in the nonprofit sector with Building Together, Project Through Cody Institute at St. FX, that there is some really good work on mobilizing the nonprofit sector and starting a nonprofit housing association. That work is going to continue. There's some really good work with the Canadian housing CHTN, like through CMHC, to actually do some work with the African Nova Scotian and African people of African descent across Canada to work on housing solutions. So I think that this is going to continue in other ways as well, like not just here in Nova Scotia, but that there is a lot of work being done across the country on these really critical issues.
There's a quote in the release from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, John Lohr. These recommendations have been foundational in guiding our efforts to address the complexities of the housing crisis in Nova Scotia. Quote goes on to say, we're making progress, but there's still much more work ahead. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Commission, stakeholders, and members of the public who've shared their experience, expertise, and ideas with us. Do you think it's a thank you and we're going to pick up on this and do what we can, or is it thank you for your time? It wasn't our commission, it wasn't our media, it wasn't our report. Thank you again for your time.
I think a lot of people on the commission have basically said, please reach out to us if we can do any more. Like, I mean, that's sort of, all of these, many of them, of course, the nonprofits, but also the private sector now, I think, have a better understanding of the issue and are trying to actively create these partnerships. Even like groups like Develop Nova Scotia, for example, where they're trying to actually create these partnerships between the nonprofit and the private sector to build more housing that's actually affordable. So I think we're going to see a lot more motion on this, but we're talking about building affordable housing in a system that pretty much was designed for people to make profit off of housing. So that's really the kind of underlying issue. So hopefully we see some progress. I mean, and again, I urge anyone in Nova Scotia really to hold government and hold people accountable to these recommendations and these actions.
Did you find the experience was what you expected?
I think it was kind of beyond expectations, really. I was really, like I said, quite impressed by the vast knowledge in every one of these individuals that was part of the commission in their different areas, and how well they knew their own communities. For example, the nonprofits, how well they knew their own communities, but also people working for the department itself and how skilled they were in supporting the kind of decisions and the recommendations, and kind of, making them, again, wording them and writing them so that they were sort of able to be implemented by government. And I think we really have to thank our co-chairs with their long experience in government for being able to make those recommendations sort of not pie in the sky idealistic, but actually realistic, that we could actually implement.
Anything else you want to add before we're finished here, Ren?
No, I'm just hoping that, I hope everybody keeps encouraging, supporting the development of all kinds of affordable housing options in your community, and support whatever that means, whether it's supportive housing or maybe higher density in some areas of your community. I hope that people realize that, we all benefit from affordable housing in our communities.
We've been speaking with Dr. Ren Thomas, Associate Professor, Dalhousie University School of Planning, and the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Commission co-chair. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.